your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
I'm Naveen Day. Thanks for joining us for a look at what made headlines this past week. The latest numbers from the Crime Severity Index have been released by Statistics Canada with promising results. The volume and severity of police-reported crime in Canada reportedly decreased 4% last year. StatsCan says non-violent crimes such as property and drug offences dropped 6% in 2024. But here at home in Lethbridge, the city saw a more impressive drop in crime rates. BCN's Landon Hickok has more details.
Lethbridge once held the highest CSI rate in the country between the years of 2019 and 2021, in part due to having twice the average national property crime rate. However, there has been a complete shift as the latest numbers show Lethbridge has shaved almost 19% off its total crime rating. In 2024, Lethbridge posted a CSI rate of 117.8, with a decrease of 18.5%. That is the third largest drop in the country, just behind Kamloops and Red Deer. Similarly, the Lethbridge metro area dropped 18.7% to 105.5. Violent crime in the city has dropped 6.6% to 135.7, and nonviolent crime has dropped an even further 23.2% to 111.5.
We've also seen an increase in clearance rates across all CSI categories, meaning more crimes are being solved and offenders are being held accountable. And according to our latest community survey, 70% of residents report feeling safe in Lethbridge. Last year, we hired 26 new police officers and 4 community peace officers. So far this year, we've already added 12 police officers and 3 new CPOs, with plans to hire additional officers for an upcoming class this fall.
Specifically, Lethbridge Police says there has been significant drops in types of crimes.
We've seen significant steps being made by the city of Lethbridge, the investments they've made, the work with the encampments, the social outreach. You know, we still have an opiate epidemic, not in this city, but in this country and in North America. We need more strategic investment in those areas to address those root causes. And you look at the investment that the city of Lethbridge has done in the downtown, add on to that the increase that we've been able to establish with our downtown patrol unit, the extra resources we have down there, the extra visibility of our police officers, the very quick response that we've been able to have downtown in Lethbridge. That has made a significant difference in conjunction with the work that the city of Lethbridge is doing.
Lethbridge now drops to 9th on the nationwide list, just above 10th place Edmonton. For Bridge City News, I'm Landon Hickok.
The city of Lethbridge says Henderson Lake is seeing little algae bloom and cyanobacteria levels this summer, thanks in part to weather. 2 employees from Lethbridge Polytechnic, Tyler Branson and Jin Kim, monitor the lake's water every 2 weeks by collecting samples to measure oxygen levels, take nutritional analysis, and monitor algae concentration. Phosphorus can fuel algae growth, especially in hot weather. It was what caused a cyanobacteria advisory last summer, but cooler temperatures and heavy rainfall have caused levels to remain low this year. The city says the work of the 2 men helps keep tabs on the state of the lake in order to ensure safety for all people and pets surrounding it.
The main concern with cyanobacteria is the toxins that the bacteria can produce. When we're just looking at a lake that we presume has an algae bloom or cyanobacteria bloom, we don't know for sure whether it's toxic or not, so we tend to err on the side of caution. The toxins that are released are harmful to humans, animals, livestock, etc. So it's best to not have any contact. It can cause some skin irritations, but the majority of the concerns come if you ingest it or inhale it.
When we're out here on Tuesdays, we're mostly collecting our samples, and then we do the majority of our work back at the lab at the Polytechnic. So it is a 2-phase process for us. It provides us a lot of hands-on experience, especially for some of the summer students we do bring out. It's not very often you get to do your Ekman grabs and are out on a lake for a morning taking these samples. So it's really beneficial for us to be able to provide these opportunities to students that we have.
I'm a greenhouse technician / research assistant, so I'm pretty much stuck in the greenhouse all day working with plants, and every 2 weeks I get to come out here, and especially when it's sunny like this, it's really nice.
Coming up next, 5 former junior hockey players walk free after being acquitted on sexual assault charges. And a date has been set for 2 leaders of the 2022 Freedom Convoy to hear their fate after being convicted for their roles in the Ottawa protest. Thursday, in a London, Ontario courtroom, 5 players from Canada's 2018 World Junior Hockey Team were acquitted on charges of sexual assault by Superior Court Justice Maria Caracia. The players were met by protesters outside the courtroom when they arrived for sentencing. The judge found Michael McLeod, Dylan Dubé, Carter Hart, Cal Foote, and Alex Fermenton not guilty of sexual assault. After winning gold medals at the World Juniors in 2018, the players were accused of having non-consensual group sex in June of 2018 in London when a woman known only as EM, but the judge ruled the Crown did not prove its case and EM's evidence was not credible. Judge Caracia spent roughly 5 hours laying out her analysis of the case and her reasoning for the verdict. She also found McLeod not guilty on an additional charge of being a party to the offense of sexual assault. While delivering her ruling, the judge said the complainant had a, quote, tendency to blame others for inconsistencies in her story, including police officers and her lawyers in the civil lawsuit. None of the players spoke to reporters outside the courtroom, but Michael McLeod's lawyer called the ruling a vindication.
Key elements of EM's story were contradicted by the evidence, exposing serious falsehood and leading to today's clear and just verdict of not guilty. Justice Caracia rejected EM's claims of fear and her claims of non-consent. That should be the takeaway from today's judgment. The damage to Mr. McLeod's reputation and his career has been significant. But today's decision begins to restore what was very unfairly taken away from him.
Here it is. It is both gratifying and unsurprising to hear an impartial and fully informed decision maker accept Mr. Hart's testimony about what happened on June 19th, 2018 as unshaken, credible, and true. To anyone who is surprised or angered by today's outcome, it is the direct result of the media's ongoing failure to publicize the weaknesses in the prosecution's case as it unfolded.
Also outside the London courthouse, the complainant's lawyer called the verdict, quote, devastating.
The justice system continues to fall short on identifying and eradicating myths and stereotypes. It struggles to understand complicated social interactions, such as victim responses to unpredictable, threatening situations, such as that described by EM. These and other problems continue to act as significant barriers to justice in cases of sexual assault. I am hopeful that the verdict today is not the end, and I know that EM very much wants some good to come from this case.
Kara Lebenson is a lawyer with strategic criminal defense in Lethbridge and says she is not surprised by the not guilty verdicts. She says the issue of consent was certainly front and center in this case, and while the Me Too movement opened up some very positive conversations around the issue of consent, the law is still the law.
It's one of the cornerstones of a democratic society to everyone having the right to a fair trial, the right to a lawyer, the right to present evidence, and also to confront witnesses in their trial. So if we lived in a society where everybody, not just women, but men who make complaints of sexual assault, if we were to just believe them at face value and prosecute accordingly, that's not democratic. That's not due process. The judge in this case actually alluded to a very well-respected judge in Ontario. Her name's Justice Anne Malloy. She's a Superior Court judge in Ontario. And She commented in one of her sex assault trials that believe the victim actually has no place in a criminal trial. We can listen to the victim, we can consider their evidence, but to believe them at face value without giving the accused people their rights, according to our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, that's unconstitutional. And that brings us to one of the fundamental principles in law, and one of the most important constitutional rights of an accused person is the right to be presumed innocent before proven guilty. And so we have to get to that road to prove them guilty before believing a complainant at face value. And I believe that there is a way to balance the rights of the complainant and the rights of the accused person.
In the case of the 5 hockey players acquitted Thursday, the Crown has 30 days to file a notice of appeal in which they would have to point out legal flaws in the judge's reasoning. Tamara, Lich and Chris Barber, 2 leaders of the Freedom Convoy protests, are scheduled to be sentenced for mischief on October the 7th in an Ottawa courtroom. In addition to lengthy prison sentences, the Crown wants to seize Barber's truck, which was used in the protest. A forfeiture hearing on that matter is scheduled for September the 12th. Ontario Court Justice Heather Perkins McVeigh said Thursday she wants to rule on the mischief sentence and truck forfeiture at the same time so that she does not deliver piecemeal decisions. Lich and Barber were both found guilty of mischief in April for their roles in the convoy protest, which saw activists fill much of downtown Ottawa for 3 weeks, beginning in late January 2022, to protest vaccine mandates and other pandemic measures. The Crown is seeking a prison sentence of 7 years for Lich and 8 years for Barber, who was also found guilty of counseling others to disobey a court order. The lawyers for both Lich and Barber are seeking absolute discharges for their clients, which would mean that neither of them would receive a criminal record. Earlier in the week, Toronto-based criminal defense lawyer Ari Goldkind weighed in on the sentences requested by the Crown. He says the lengthy terms are one of the most grotesque he has ever seen.
This is one of the most offensive, one of the stupidest, one of the most power-hungry, almost banana republic things I've seen in 20 years of doing this. You just look at the kinds of sentences that people get for violent crimes, rapes, child molestation, child pornography, carjackings, home invasions. This is lawfare, to use that term, at one of the worst and most egregious scales ever. This makes my blood boil. You compare the 7 and 8 year sentence they're seeking for Lich and Barber, where nobody will dispute these were peaceful protests, basically saying, don't make me take an vaccine, clearing my throat on purpose. You can Hamas in downtown Toronto or Montreal for free and with a police escort. So if there's ever a message being sent to ordinary, average, hardworking Canadians, truckers who simply wanted to make a living and make their point where? In the actual capital of our nation for a couple weeks, this is one of the most grotesque jail sentences I've ever seen be asked for. And in my view, it is shameful.
Eva Chipiuk, a lawyer known for her involvement in the Freedom Convoy and vocal criticism of Canadian institutions, says she was blindsided after the Royal Bank of Canada terminated its banking relationship with her, citing risk-related concerns. According to an official letter the banking institution sent to Chipiuk, which was shared on her X account, her recent activity was outside of RBC's client risk appetite, and it would no longer be in a position to continue serving her. Chipiuk told media the move came after a flagged transaction involving a Bitcoin purchase. The bank has given her until August the 18th to find an alternative institution. 3 Canadian workers have been freed from a remote northern BC mine following what is being described as a meticulously executed rescue plan. Red Chris mine operator Newmont Corporation says the men were brought to the surface Thursday night after being trapped underground for more than 60 hours. The workers were trapped Tuesday after 2 rock falls, but were able to escape to a refuge chamber that allowed them to survive with enough air, food, and water for an extended stay. Voting by some 55,000 Canada Post workers got underway this week. The Canadian Union of Postal Workers has urged union members to vote no on the Crown Corporation's final offer. This is amid fears of strike action, and some experts say that a no vote will result in a lockout or layoffs, and businesses are ready to abandon the service.
The Canadian Union of Postal Workers, or CUPW, which represents 55,000 Canada Post employees, is being forced to vote on a new deal despite not reaching an agreement in 18 months of negotiations. During this period, many businesses have already given up on the Crown Corporation following a number of work stoppages. Recent data released by the Canadian Federation for Independent Business shows a mass exodus from the service at an alarming rate is happening at the small business level.
Small businesses they've been impacted by a lot of uncertainty, and they're concerned that any more Canada Post disruptions will impact their ability to reach their customers and to do business. When we looked at the results of the 2024 strike, we saw that roughly 13% of Canadian small business owners walked away entirely from Canada Post, and there's roughly 3/4 that rely on the private courier market currently to meet their needs. When we look at what small businesses are using Canada Post for, it's mainly for sending checks. Not very many of them are using them as a package courier service. In fact, roughly 1/5 of small businesses see Canada Post as critical to their business. So that's not a lot of businesses that are really relying on Canada Post these days.
Approximately 73% of small businesses rely on private couriers for package delivery, and Canada Post is mainly utilized for letter carriage. To prevent private companies such as Amazon from expanding their extensive delivery network into letter carriage, the CFIB says Canada Post needs to pay attention to recommendations already given to them.
Well, we've seen the federal government and Canada Post undertake a lot of reviews over the past decade or so, and what we don't want is the federal government to launch another review. There's been enough reviews. The federal government and Canada Post knows what action they need to take to turn the postal service around. There's been a lot of recommendations from a lot of different reports, and CFIB is recommending that they follow those recommendations so they can provide a more certain service to customers, including small businesses.
Canada Post and the CUPW have been engaged in a more than 18-month-long period of negotiations and subsequent strike activity, which the Crown Corporation says increased the company's financial losses at a rate of $10 million per day in June. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
Switching our focus now to the Trump trade talks, Prime Minister Mark Carney said that it was unlikely there would be a deal without tariffs. But the Americans are now saying a deal without tariffs is possible. So what has changed? To talk about this is our political reporter Brian Lilley, who sat down with BCN's Jeanette Roche.
You know, as is often the case, it's the message coming out of Washington. And, this is an area where I've been very critical of the Carney government. I don't think they've handled the negotiations and the trade talks with Trump particularly well. I think he has the wrong person in charge in Ambassador Kristen Hillman. I think it should be Intergovernmental Affairs Minister, or I think it's still that Dominic LeBlanc. That's the guy that I think should be in charge. Their cabinet positions may have shifted a bit, but because you need a political closer in there. So I've been critical of him on that, but on the other hand, dealing with Donald Trump is a bit difficult. I was speaking with one Liberal MP who said, look, you got to remember, it's like you're wrestling a huge gorilla naked and in the dark. You don't know what's coming next. And Trump is kind of like that. He'd been signaling that there would be no agreement without some form of tariffs. And so I thought when Prime Minister Carney came out last week ahead of the cabinet meeting and said that to reporters, that it's unlikely, that he was softening the ground, that he was trying to prepare Canadians to accept the inevitable, which is a message I've been hearing since I was in Washington last February. But then this past weekend, Trump's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, ended up giving an interview to CBS's Face the Nation. And Margaret Brennan, the host, was pressing him several times on what this means for Canada. Will there be a deal with Canada with or without tariffs? And he talked about how, well, most stuff already is, enters the U.S. tariff-free due to the nature of the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement. But, you should expect smaller countries to pay a tariff, but the larger economies won't if and this is the big if they open up their economies. And the fact is, we don't know what that means, Jeanette.
The premiers of Ontario, Alberta, and Saskatchewan have signed a memorandum of understanding calling for the construction of new pipelines using Canadian steel. The announcement came prior to the premiers' meeting with the Prime Minister Tuesday.
We know there's strength in taking a united front, but we cannot achieve our shared provincial goals without cooperation from the federal government. Alberta knows this. Saskatchewan knows this, Ontario knows this, and it's time for the federal government to acknowledge it as well. And if Prime Minister Mark Carney doesn't want to work with us, it's not just myself and Scott Moe he'll have to worry about. He'll also have to contend with Premier Doug Ford, who has said many times he'll be all over him like an 800-pound gorilla. So it's time to get rid of the bad laws that have harmed Canada's ability to grow the energy sector and other industries such as mining and manufacturing.
This new agreement will help move Western oil and gas to new and existing refineries in southern Ontario and to northern tidewater with deep sea port in James Bay. It will connect Ontario's critical minerals in the Ring of Fire region to new ports in Western Canada, helping to build a true end-to-end critical mineral supply chain. All of it will be built using great Ontario-made and Saskatchewan-made steel, creating jobs, attracting investment, and unlocking the full potential of our economy. And all of it will be done in partnership with Indigenous communities.
Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe says bottlenecks need to be removed. He reiterated the need for pipelines to East Coast refineries and access to shipping ports in the Northwest. Alberta RCMP's auto theft unit has busted an organized crime vehicle theft ring after an investigation dating back to December of 2024. 7 people from Edmonton and High River are facing a total of 99 criminal charges after RCMP recovered nearly $2 million in stolen vehicles and are looking to recover another 150 vehicles. Cocaine, OxyContin pills, and cash were additionally seized. The suspects would use Alberta Registry's third-party authorization system to register fake VINs under the names of unsuspecting people without their permission. At times, they would report the re-VINed vehicles as stolen once they registered and collect the claim payment. Recent high-end and luxury models are the main targets according to RCMP, including top pickup truck models from Toyota and Land Rover.
30 vehicles are being linked to the charged individuals, and this investigation is ongoing, and additional vehicles and suspects are expected to be linked, and additional charges are likely. Third-party authorizations through Alberta registries have been identified as a loophole that has been significantly exploited by individuals involved in organized crime to legitimize stolen re-VIN vehicles. The Alberta RCMP's Auto Theft Unit is committed to working with Service Alberta to protect the vehicle registration system.
RCMP say that between January and June, they have seen a continuous drop in auto thefts 4 years in a row, with the highest drop this year of 18%. When multiple wildfires tore through Jasper National Park on July 22nd of 2024, the result was one of the most destructive fire events in Canadian history, destroying 358 properties and causing around $1.2 billion in insured damages. Thousands were forced to leave their homes, not knowing whether they would ever get a chance to return. Now, at the one-year anniversary, first responders and locals in Jasper are reflecting back on the devastating event, which wiped out a third of the town's structures.
So we're 1 year from the fire that hit Jasper. What goes through your mind as you reflect on that night?
Mental health of our members is a big one, not only for our members, but the community itself in general, right? There's going to be a lot of emotions coming up over the next, week or two here as we kind of get through this. So that is going to be top priority, is just taking care of our members and making sure that we are response ready and capable to go for any future incidents that we may attend to. For myself and 7 other members of the department that also lost their homes at night, it was pretty difficult to work the incident, knowing that we've lost our stuff. But we are all professional in what we do. We persevere, we move on, and we know that there's a job to do and things to plan for and prepare for in the future. That's where we're at right now, is we're taking our lessons learned from that incident and working into it into our future operations and future tactical planning for any future incidents that may happen to the community.
Jasper is a community where we've invested in emergency management for years. We have some plans, we have some staff. I'm really proud of all the work and all the things we have in place. We still got overwhelmed and ended up in the situation we are in following the 2024 wildfires. So this speaks to the magnitude of the natural disasters that are hitting communities across the country and how we need to work better together and prepare for those types of incidents. The supports that are required to keep us going, not only during the incident, but after an incident, and removing stigma, providing resources, and just doing better in following up and making sure that people get the resources they need is also a pretty strong theme in our after action review. As a Jasper resident, as the incident commander for the municipality of Jasper, I do believe there's nothing we could have done. There's no amount of resources or firefighters or air tankers that could have stopped that fire. The fire behavior was so intense, the winds were so intense, the conditions were so dry. Good effort, but I don't think anyone could have stopped it personally.
The Bar U Ranch south of Calgary wants to get the word out about a historic painting they are trying to recover that was accidentally sold earlier this month. The painting comes from a local Calgary artist who regularly displays her paintings at the Bar U's general store. The painting in question depicts the Bar U site before the ranch was established with herds of bison. While the painting was initially meant to be on consignment for sale, the artist opted to sell the painting to Bar U after deciding it was meant for the store to keep. However, a staff member in the gift shop who was unaware of that fact sold the painting to a customer. Now, the volunteer organization Friends of the Bar U Ranch are trying to track down the customer to get the painting back.
A gentleman walked in and said, "Oh, is that for sale?" And the brand new staff member went, "Well, I don't know." So they took it down. There was no sold sticker on it. And being a really proactive staff member, she went into the system to see if she could find it. And she went, "Oh, yeah, it's in here. This is what the price is." And the gentleman went, "Oh, I'll take it." And unfortunately, that was the cost of the materials in this painting. And it should have been transferred from our inventory into our assets at a larger value. And that step didn't happen, and it was the perfect storm.
October 20th is the day to make your voice heard in your community as municipal elections will take place across Alberta. Ryan Meny, a candidate running for a councillor position in Lethbridge City Council, will share his experience in city politics and what he'd like to do to make a difference in our beautiful city. That's coming up next. And if you're watching us online, that full interview is available on our YouTube channel.